Ladies, gentlemen of the Bat family, the time has finally come. The Penguin episode 1 is out, and here is my review, recap, and breakdown of the first episode titled After Hours. Now, I've got so many notes here. I'm recording this a couple of days before it releases. I don't know how much I've cut it down, but if you know me, we do kind of talk a lot on the channel, so I recommend to strap yourselves in. We're going to nerd out about entering the Batverse again in a new way, not through Batman's perspective, but through that of Oz Cobb's. Yes, not Oz Cobblepot, that still seems to be stirring a little bit online, but yeah, Oz Cobb and his adventure, or should I say, his clawing for power to rise to the Kingpin status in Gotham. And this first episode, I really hope you're all pleased with it, because I was really blown away. Just to remind everyone, I've seen 4 episodes. I stopped there for my no spoiler impression review, because I wanted to, after episode 4, speculate and theorize about what happens each episode after the midway season mark. So, right at the beginning, as many of you already knew here going in, the Penguin picks up with its first scene literally right at the end of the Batman, with Oz looking out over Gotham City as we hear all of these news reports. This is kind of like a little mini recap, if you will, but obviously as a fan, I found this really, really cool to see as well, because I appreciated even getting these new perspectives on seeing the seawall explosions across the city at the ending, or towards the ending of the Batman movie, with just people recording it on their phones. It just makes you think of all of the crazy Batman lore that we all know from the comics, and the crucibles that Batman has got ahead in his career. Do you know what I mean? It's just wild seeing that. And yeah, they also say that looting and rioting has become the norm. I mean, just imagine how busy Batman is when you're seeing all of these reports going on. They also bring up in how the murder of the longtime mob boss Carmine Falcone incites a power struggle. So, let's just say that isn't John Turturro on the news report there, which is when we cut to 1 week later and we see that Oz arrives at the Iceberg Lounge. And you can tell that Tri-Corner, which is where, the Iceberg Lounge is cleared up a bit more in terms of the flooding, but the damage is still pretty extensive, with cars everywhere, rubble everywhere. And this is where we see Oz bring a sledgehammer into the Iceberg Lounge and break into Carmine Falcone's safe. And in the safe, as per what Carmine is kind of like, he has quite a bit of dirt on people, one of them being a councilman Sebastian Haydee. This could come in handy later with Penguin's ambitions, if you kind of, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, because there was a reference to him again in the episode, and also Johnny Vitti. But I suspect Carmine had dirt on Johnny Vitti just in case he ever needed to use it, even though Michael Kelly's Johnny Vitti is in the Falcone crime syndicate. I think as the Kingpin, you still have to be aware that there might be other people vying for power even within that of your own family, so he has things like this just in case. And it looks like he's sleeping with a certain someone, and let's just say that certain someone could cause a little bit of trouble if that was to get out. There's also some very expensive jewels, but this is when none other than Alberto Falcone arrives holding a gun to Oz, and Oz was just pretending that he was getting them for Alberto anyway. But notice how Alberto is. This is something I've been breaking down for a while, like the past couple of years, ever since we heard casting calls that Alberto would be kind of way in over his head. He's like a socialite, a drug addict, and all of this stuff. And even when he's pointing the gun at Penguin, he's shaking. I think he's feeling, obviously, so much pressure. And he does communicate a little bit of that in their conversation, but not before he actually reveals that he has a new deal going on. And so Penguin tries to get some information out of him about that deal through offering him a drink, because he's trying to stay away from drops, but one thing leads to another, and he is already doing drops. And Alberto talks about how the plan for his new Kingpin position is to get a new kind of high, separate from that of the drops on the streets that we saw in the first movie, and he wants to revolutionize the drug game. And as we learn as we go throughout this episode, it's actually a plan that he had in place with Sophia. It shows that they really wanted to go their own way, especially with Sophia being in Arkham the past 10 years. We've had Alberto visit her each and every week, showing just how close they are, which is why Sophia, this episode, is so driven to find out what the heck has happened to her brother. But yeah, it really shows that all while he might not be capable, both brother and sister there felt like they had a plan together to really do something and not be beholden to that of the others in the crime family, who even Carmine Falcone himself was a bit hesitant about. But we also learned some other interesting context, which I found really cool, especially if you've read the other canonical material, if you will, such as the Riddler Year One, because Penguin learns from Alberto that Falcone knew that Oz was a good soldier, but also that he was skimming money off the top, and that he never took enough for Carmine to actually mind about it, because he knew what it meant to a guy like Penguin to get a piece, how that made him feel. That is something I kind of appreciated, just getting that insight into Carmine Falcone in the past, because obviously, you know, we saw Carmine in the first movie, but he's dead now. So little nuggets of information like that are just, you know, nice to learn about. And it must have made Oz feel like, oh, damn, like, oh, God. And the reason why I brought up the Riddler Year One is because clearly Carmine was okay with it, because in that comic book, people have actually been killed when they've been caught or found out to be skimming money off of the top. And this is when, you know, Oz starts telling him the story of Rex Calabrese. We heard this in the trailers because he was explaining how there's different types of power. And what Penguin was saying here was really emulating what he wants. Oz really, as Lauren LeFranc said, just wants to be loved and revered and have respect. And this is when Alberto takes it the wrong way and basically realizes it's what Oz wants. And this is where the dial switches up, as per what I teased in my no spoilers review for the first 10 minutes in the episode, because he calls Oz's dream pathetic. He mocks him and barely is containing his laughter. Oswald Cobb, remember him? What a guy. And he then ends it off by saying, what a little bitch, and Oz shoots him 5 or 6 times, and Alberto Falcone is dead. This is insane. If you've been watching me long enough, you'll know that I have been calling that Alberto would die in the series. I just didn't expect it this early. I really didn't. So my mouth was hanging open, because this is huge, because he's meant to be the next Kingpin. Sure, it might not have ended out that way for him, because, yeah, sure, he was way in over his head. But this leaves Oz in such a mess that he has to deal with, one of his own making. And this is where it kind of finally clicks with Oz. And you get that moment where he's like, oh, fuck, and you get the title screen. And I love the little cello thing that they have going on in this series when that rolls. I mean, it's not just unique to the title screen, as we do hear it later on. What a way to start the episode. And so after this, he takes Alberto's body and realizes, yeah, why am I carrying this? Let's just throw it down the stairway. And he goes outside and he notices Victor and his friends stealing the rims off of Oz's car, similar to Jason Todd. I mean, I've made this joke myself, as well as Lauren LeFranc, saying that Victor is basically the Robin to Penguin's Batman, and most certainly that is the case. And Victor here, unlike his friends, doesn't really manage to get away. So this is what I meant in my no spoiler review. When Victor is begging for his life in this moment, Oz obviously instantly notices that he's really struggling to try and get his words out with his stutter, and I just felt like he could relate to him instantly here. Now, I'm not saying it was like an instant mad deep connection or anything like that, but I do think that Oz probably low-key had a bit of a soft spot for him, just in terms of relating potentially to how, you know, Oz has club foot and people look at him in a certain way.
You're always just a gimp in an empty suit. I'll spray paint your ass!
Because of that, and perhaps he thinks that, you know, people may look at Victor as, oh, having a weakness or something. So he just sees maybe a bit of a kindred spirit in that instantaneously, but this only further gets demonstrated as we go throughout the episode, which is why I love the dynamic between both of these characters so much, and you just gotta enjoy it more and more. If you like Victor, played by the fantastic Renzi Feliz, and obviously Colin Farrell, who's incredible in this first episode, these two, you're gonna love them more and more and more as they go throughout. So Oz uses this as an opportunity to use Victor to help him get rid of Alberto's body. This series has a very subtle way of humor. Like, Oz has charisma, even though he's a bit of a sleazeball at the the same time. You know, there's that moment where Vic is thinking of running away, and we have we have Oz being like, this scumbag disrespected me. You gonna disrespect me, Vic? Or that moment where they're in the car after that. He's like, what do you think of this air freshener? Aqua Paradise. But as we know later on, I mean, sure, he's probably proud of the air freshener, but he didn't divulge to Victor at that time that it's actually used as a bit of a weapon that he uses to stab one of Sophia's men's eyes, which could be a reference to, you know, the Penguin's eye injury in the comics. But, you know, I think he actually is proud of the air freshener because, as he mentions to Sophia outside the Falcone residence, you know, it's the purple or plum car, but it's got nice leather seats. And, you know, Oz comes from not any money, you know, so it's just there's something to Oz and the way that Colin Farrell plays it. I trust you get what I mean, but the way that this series does it, it's not like on the nose comedy. It just slides so well in there that it can make you laugh out loud quite a bit, despite the tone of a gang war series. Now, after Oz is talking to Vic about, you know, his slushies and knowing where he, you know, comes from, the east side, because he came from there as well, he takes a look through Alberto's phone and notices that there is a shipment for his new drug plan. But there's also a little bit of an Easter egg there on the 23rd of November for Gotham Knights. But even amongst this car ride, another thing that I went on about in my no spoilers review is just the visuals of Gotham. I loved seeing these little locations of the streets of Gotham. The streets are borderline disgusting given the state of the city right now, and this area reminded me of that drophead stealing from the Good Times grocery store at the beginning of the Batman movie. It's not the same location, but it's just nice seeing more of it. Or in that car chase scene as Penguin is, you know, getting away from Sophia's men, you see him going down that street with the skyscrapers just towering over Gotham. I feel like they've been very faithful to the visuals that the movie set up. It's just that obviously we're seeing a little bit of a different version of it because, you know, it's not just taking place a lot of the time at night. Now, sure, we did get some daytime scenes in the Batman movie, but it's going to be a lot more like that in this series. So this is where Oz needs to head to Eve Carlo's place in order to get an alibi. And after Victor and Oz get a bite to eat, this is where we get to the point of where Victor's usefulness is up after they stash Alberto's body. And he tells Victor that there's a nice sunrise behind him and that he should take a look. You can tell that Oz is used to doing stuff like this, but he's also, you know, there's a little slither of, I don't know if I would say him being uncomfortable, but you know, you can tell he kind of likes the kid a little bit at the same time. And I would say when Vic is pleading his case here and how he could help him with whatever he needs, this is where Oz really does connect to Victor, more so than, you know, when he first heard him stutter, as I mentioned a few minutes ago. Because the lines Victor says is exactly what would strike a chord in Oz, in my opinion, because Oz asks, like, you know, why would I need you? And Victor simply replies, you know, I've got ambition. I'm not a waste. And that's all Oz has really been told his life, in that, you know, people don't see his ambition. He's a waste. He's nothing but a gimp in a suit. And so I don't really think in this moment he wants to treat somebody else that way by killing them off. So after warning him that if he steps out of line, he's going to gut him like a fish, he's like, shut the hell up. Yeah, I want to watch the sunrise. It's just little moments like this. It's just all of a sudden, oh, okay, right, okay, I'll stand over here. So yeah, I do agree that despite everything I just said, Victor probably feels kind of being held hostage at this point and is thinking, maybe how do I get out of this situation? But along the way, this might be something that Victor discovers that he might actually want for himself. I mean, later on when Oz is giving him that task and where he's counting on him, he wants to trust him. They're talking about how perhaps everything that he had, his family and where he lived, everything in that area is gone. But he's still made it. He's still standing here. And the world, as a result, isn't built for guys like us. You know, that's why we got to take whatever we decide is ours, because no one is going to give it to us, not without a fight. So Victor is so new into all of this. It might not really be his, you know, usual ballpark, but at the same time, Oz is giving him an opportunity to do more than just spend his days thinking small, stealing rims and barely getting by. You know, or does he want more for himself? And so, since this is the show called The Penguin, next up we see Oz's apartment. You know, it's fairly snazzy, and I love how his bedroom is a literal safe. You can tell that Oz has thought about everything. Now, Victor takes this opportunity to look around, and you can see a younger Oz with his brothers in various photos. And meanwhile, in Oz's safe/bedroom, we get to see Oz's foot. And as I said, he suffers from clubfoot, and it is pretty messed up. And I think this is something that can be treated early on, but this might be symbolic of how, Oz's mother couldn't maybe afford treatments when he was a kid, and that's why it is the way it is right now. And this is when Oz heads to work, because you kind of need to treat it like any other day, as he says. And of course, he operates the drops business for the family. So this is when he asks one of his men to bring a letter to Councilman Haiti, in which he shows the dirt he has on him, signing it, "Let's be pals." I think this could pop up again later in the show. This is something I can speculate about. Notice how he said as well that Councilman Haiti is a big fan of Bella Real's, and he likes to think of himself as one of the good ones, but he's in a lot of debt with Carmine. So maybe the more that Oz climbs into power over the course of this series, that he could, think about it. If Councilman Haiti is in his pocket and he has connections to Bella Real, or is at least in with her, this could tie into the second movie with how he has his fingers into even the mayoral system if Councilman Haiti is in Bella Real's good books. Do you see where I'm going with this? I'm not mega confident. That's just a random thing that I haven't seen fully come to fruition just yet in what I've seen. But we also learn in this moment that one of their men got jumped by the Odessa mob, which is also known in the comics as the Bratva, which is a nice little reference there. And they're a pretty brutal gang in Gotham, and they got the whole stash. I don't know if we're gonna see. I don't want to give too much away here. There are little teasers of other gangs that we will get in Gotham, but I don't know if we're going to see the Bratva themselves. But it's, again, a nice little, I don't know if I'll call that an Easter egg, but a reference. Now, this is where the family, the Falcone crime syndicate themselves, summon Oz to their residence. Now, Victor is kind of cacking himself. I think Oz is a little bit as well, but he's trying to play it cool. We learned that the meeting was with Johnny Vitti and Milos Grappa, and they've decided to shut down Oz's drops operation, the plant that he's operating out of, and they're consolidating everything that they're doing and moving operations to Robbinsville, which, Penguin isn't really happy with, because it's going to decline sales. It's like in the middle of nowhere, like nobody cares about Robbinsville and Gotham. The business will suffer, but they're saying that the heat is on them. There's blood in the water. The police are circling, so they've got a target on their back. And that was just like another nice reference that I like to hear as well, because beforehand, think about it, Carmine owned everyone in the city, all of the main players, the DA, the mayor, the police commissioner. So hearing the very fact that the police are circling, it just shows you how, yeah, sure, there's a gang war and they're still gonna rise out on top, or Oz is, but they're no way near as powerful as they were. They're actually concerned about the GCPD now, because as per the ending of the movie, we've got Bella Real, we're gonna get a new commissioner, we're gonna get a new DA, and they're not gonna be able to get away with as much as they did before in where Falcone controlled everyone. But this could be where, as I mentioned a few seconds ago, if Penguin rises out on top, maybe, well, as we know he will, the fact that he may have something on Councilman Haiti, that could be his ticket into the new restored institutions of Gotham, and where they think, okay, everything's a nice shiny coat of new paint, no corruption, but Oz is already in there right at the inception of it. And so this is where Oz says that maybe he can fix this because, ultimately this is about money, right? And now he's got wind of a new shipment coming in, potential to revolutionize the drug business, but little did he know Sophia Falcone was overhearing the whole conversation, and obviously that's very awkward because, as we learned throughout the episode, she was in on this plan. Obviously, initially there's a bit of tension between the characters, and you can definitely tell that they have a bit of history, but, that's not really the concern right now. But what Sophia is concerned about is Alberto. Oz doesn't really answer the question, so she literally follows him outside and calls him out on that, and you can tell by his answer that she's not really convinced, and so she asks him to get a bite to eat as in right now. And so they go to a restaurant, and, you know, what I found really interesting here is we see how Sophia is eating. She's using her hands, she's not using the cutlery at all. And I think this is honestly just somewhat symbolic of how Arkham has turned her a bit more into an animal, if you will. Now, I'm not saying she's outright animal, but you see what I mean. She's literally grabbing it and, like, you know, famished. Let's just say, from being paid to keep your elbows off the table, that is not the place she's at anymore. You can even see people looking at her, wondering if, you know, it's really her, the psycho killer, as she put it, roaming around free, the hangman. And you even get a little bit of a teeny glimpse at their history in this moment as well, in where we have Sophia saying, "I'd hate for you to feel nervous with me, because despite what you might think, I don't blame you. If you hadn't gone to my father, you know, he left you no choice." So obviously I can't say too much here, but it definitely is implying that Penguin had something to do with what ended up happening to Sophia. But as for how things exactly go down, that remains to be seen. And it's only a little bit of a teaser for some story that is to come in the episodes ahead. And this, I love this next bit. This is where the conversation just takes a complete turn, with Sophia saying all of a sudden that Alberto told me that he was going to your club last night to get to my father's loft, and it's all a part of the plan that he cooked up. It was our shared secret. But then today I hear you talking about revolutionizing the drug trade. So once again, this demonstrates the Penguin's ability to weasel his way out of anything, or should I say waddle his way out of anything. He admits that he was, a bit stupid by opening his mouth, but he saw no reason for the plan to not go forward just because Al is on another bender. And this was brilliant. Not that I think Penguin knew that Sophia wasn't aware of his addiction issues, but it turns out that she wasn't, that he was addicted to drops and alcohol and stuff like that. I'm not saying she fully believed him, but it definitely cast some doubt, because it's like, oh yeah, what if he has kind of gone AWOL? But yeah, Sophia is still definitely onto him regardless. And also, I have to say, and I said it in my review, and this is honestly nothing in comparison to what is to come, but Kristen Milioti is just a powerhouse. Obviously, things right now are fairly calm. She's, still being a bit intimidating, but you're seeing these moments where she just goes from smiley to completely blank, to the point of where it is really, really believable for her to be this antagonist to Oz in the series, despite there also being, as per what the trailers get into, a little bit of an alliance. It's, only one of them can still end out on top. She is very formidable, and I love her acting. I love the material they've given her. And I think formidable is the word, and they've done a great job at getting that across. And so Oz, rightfully so, is a bit spooked by this. So we see Oz and Victor heading to one of Oz's other cars a few stops away in order to be discreet about where they're heading next. And now notice the camera focusing on the disabled seats on the subway, with Oz refusing to sit on it. It just speaks to the larger stuff that we got into earlier, with how he doesn't want to be defined by that, because that's how others have defined him. So he's refusing to take that seat. And we also, in this moment, had a little bit of a Riddler fanboy with a Riddler pin on his backpack, a Riddler mask, saying to people to scan the QR code to see Gotham's true face. Now, you can see how the QR code has a little bit of a Riddler insignia in the middle of it. Now, I have tried to scan this myself, but it wasn't working for me, so I'm not sure if any of you had any luck with that. I don't know what it would head to other than the Rattlada website, the marketing website that was used for the Batman and the Penguin series, but maybe it's also got a link to the files that we got after the Batman, in where you could download the Know What I Know folder, and in that folder was all of the evidence that Riddler had, his journals, the pictures of the Arkham's deaths, everything like that. So maybe it could just lead to the truth about Gotham, or Gotham's true face, as he puts it, so the citizens of Gotham could have the evidence for themselves. Now, Future Boba here, it turns out it actually does work, and if you scan the code successfully, it takes you to gothamstrueface.com, which is really a relink to that of Rattlada.com. So I was kind of half right with how I suspected it would take you to Rattlada anyway. So hopefully we actually get to see more cool things like this, because if you click on one of the words, it hyperlinks you to a little page about Alberto Falcone. Next up, you gotta love how Oz starts the car up and immediately Dolly Parton's 9 to 5 song starts playing and Victor could barely contain his laughter. And this is where we finally see where Oz brings Victor, and that is to none other than his mother's home. And notice how careful he was getting there. He mentions that he's never ever taken anyone here before, so he clearly doesn't want anyone to be able to get to her. And we see tons and tons of photos of Oz and his brothers on the wall at different ages, and we see that Oz gives his mother the jewel necklace that Alberto chucked at him earlier on, so I guess better hope that nobody spots Francis with that. And it turns out that Oz went to go get Francis so they could get out of town for a while, because we saw him get the money out, and it turns out that the reports from ages and ages ago about his mother suffering with Lewy body's dementia is true, because we saw how Oz pointed out how her pills were ruined in the bath, and she said that the boys were playing in the bath and they didn't want to get out. I would say the biggest takeaway from this scene is just seeing the impact that Oz's mother has had on his life through the way that she speaks to him, and it just gives us a glimpse into how she raised him. And she asks him what he did, and I love how he's honest with her. So, like, she's clearly okay with the crime life, and he says that he killed Alberto Falcone. And she asked the reason why. And he said that, he laughed at me. And so she says, he laughed at you. Do you hear the words coming out of your mouth? How weak they sound, like a little pussy boy. And she even says, is that what you are, Oswald, a weak little pussy boy? Don't you see, dear, what you did wasn't impulsive. It was instinctual. You shot him because you wanted to. Just like that. And you can almost see that she's proud of him, calling him, her big, strong bull of a boy. And as a result of that, I mean, I'm not a psychologist or anything, but looking at it through the psychoanalytical lens, how, as a result, this made Penguin into the man he came to be. Because a mother who raises her sons to not want to see weakness in them and just growing up like that, if they were ever to get disrespect, you can imagine you wouldn't remotely take it in order to live up to your mother's expectations as you're growing up in life. And this is why, if anybody mocks Oswald, even Carmine, who called him a gimp in the suit, and he was like, I'm going to spray paint your ass with his Uzi in that moment. He can't contain himself in the same way as how when Alberto called him a little bitch, he straight up killed him. It is clearly such a trigger from Oz, and we can see where it all kind of stems from in how she's viewed this as instilling strength into her children, and if anything, their own way of instilling ambition and motivation to be something more. It's definitely an interesting relationship for sure, but you can tell that they're really close, and he just doesn't want to disappoint her. Now, later on in Oz's apartment, we get kind of a little reference as to what the plan will be next, with Victor asking about the lyrics of the song on the TV being "Put the blame on Maine boys," and Oz says that's just the thing, it doesn't matter, kid, it's just a scapegoat. And that gives Oz the idea of, oh, how can I get out of this situation with the whole, Alberto Falcone death? Maybe I can use a scapegoat. So we see how Oz is giving Victor a task to do. Victor is very hesitant because he's never done anything like this before, and I like the whole situation of where, the audience isn't really aware of the full plan, and we see it unfold right from this point up until the very end when we get that clarity of what Victor's task was. And so the beginning seeds of that is when Oz goes to Blackgate, and we meet Clancy Brown's Salvatore Maroni, of which, just to say again, I'm over the moon with this casting, because he really does fit who would have been the Kingpin 20 years ago in Gotham before Falcone ratted him out. But, as you can tell from the conversation, Sal Maroni really isn't too much of a fan with Oz. They even have a past with how, he would do something with the Maroni's men, but ultimately, screw him over. You think I forgot about that and whatnot. But ultimately, it gets to the point in where just before Penguin leaves, he presents him with his ring, and he desperately takes it. And he's appealing very cleverly to, you can only imagine how triggered and angry Sal Maroni is over what happened to him all those years ago. Through saying the Falcones, they've been flaunting what they've done to you for years. And he asks how is it that he has it, and he says, maybe I'm more than what you think. And so this is where it gets to the whole lyrics, put the blame on Maine boys, because towards the very end of the episode now, after all of this rambling, we see Oz driving around Gotham to his apartment. He's trying to get a hold of Victor to see how the plan's working out, but he's not replying. Things are getting tense. He spots Sophia and her men outside his apartment. So the dial is freaking going up at this point. He's racing throughout Gotham. He hides in this trunk, but he still gets caught anyway. He stabs the guy with the air freshener as we went over earlier. But yeah, that guy also got hit by a freaking school bus, which was pretty funny. Oz waves to them, but that's when he gets knocked out and he gets taken back to the Falcone residence, in where he's being beaten. And this is where I'll say you really do get a taste of the peak Sophia Falcone mode. We have Oz completely stripped naked. Sophia's talking about how the Arkham guards stripped them every morning and how it was humiliating, being turned into a thing. And so she reveals that basically she learned, yeah, of course the club was clean, but the thing about driving a plum car is that it's not easy to forget. So those kids who were stealing the tires off of his car admitted that it all happened the night that Alberto was missing. And it shows you how ruthless Sophia has got at this point compared to where she would have been 10 years ago, I'll just say there. Because Oz obviously says, this teenager's just a liar. And as a result, she straight up shoots the kid. Even when obviously she didn't have to do that. But you can see how much she's unraveled. And I keep talking as if you guys have seen, what she's unraveled from. But you can obviously imagine what Arkham has done to her to be at this point of such conviction and being willing to, kill somebody like that who she knows doesn't really deserve death. Her acting, I know I keep saying it in this moment, was impeccable. If you thought this was good compared to like the restaurant scene earlier, it really does just step up more and more and more. I was excited to see Kristen Milioti in this series, but, I was mainly excited for Colin Farrell. But I have to say, I do feel like she's matching him almost with how good her performance is. And right in the nick of time, that's when Vic comes through, because we have a car crashing into the Falcone's home, and within the car, as Sophia marches towards it, is Alberto's body. Think about it. We have the finger chopped off. There's payback scratched into the ceiling of the trunk of the car. The Maronis have basically been framed, especially with Sal wearing the ring around Blackgate. The Maronis, as Penguin says after this, have got no choice but to take credit. And then it cuts back to Oz just laughing to himself again with that freaking little cello-y score kicking back in. And I love it. I love it. I feel like when you see moments like that of Oz's pure kind of laughter, it is a glimpse at like the real core him, like the taste of him you're gonna get permanently when he is elevated into Kingpin status. It's like this gratifying, self-validating moment for him, I think, in how, yeah, people are underestimating me. And in these moments when I'm laughing like this, I'm doing it. I'm ruling the game. And so at the very, very end of the episode, it ends off with Oz and Victor drinking slushies. And we get a little, again, slightly comedic scene with how it turns out that Victor didn't really follow the plan exactly. And he's like, it felt small. And we had Victor trying to explain it, but I think Oz kind of understood. He was like, no, it's fine. Room to grow. And this is what I mean about their dynamic. You ain't seen nothing yet. And I love how Vic was just kind of like, wait, Sal doesn't know. He's just kind of only cottoning on to Penguin's larger plan of what he just did with the scapegoat situation. And I love how Oz is just like, well, I don't care. Like, we just put the Maronis back on the map. And if he doesn't like that, then feck him, I don't need him. I don't need any of them. Drops of yesterday's game. I'm going to get whatever's in that shipment and I'm going to run this goddamn city. And I want you in on it. I love that because he's not forgetting how crucial Vic. I mean, if Vic didn't basically help him out then, he would be screwed. So you see what I mean? Like, he's really being like, yeah, I want you in on this with me. And then it goes back to the, it's better, right? When you mix the flavors. And I thought that was such a good way to end the episode. Like, after all of that, like, there's this severe tone, the stakes, the mess that Oz has to get out of, the thinking on his feet, the sketchiness of the plan, how Vic has to follow through, how he's thrown in the deep end, and yet it kind of ends off on like, okay, like it's definitely far from over. This is the beginning, but like, let's just kick back and have a slush puppy. Do you know what I mean? That's just brilliant. And then it ends off in the credits with the working 9 to 5 and a nice credit sequence as well. That was something that surprised me when I saw the screeners for this. I was like, okay, that's pretty cool. Not just like a normal credits, but a little bit of a animation going on there with some artwork in the background. So, you know, that is episode 1, guys. And I don't really know what more to say about it other than I just thought that was a great entry into the Penguin show. It introduced everyone right off of the back of the Batman, or should I say the situation of things, right away with the murder of Alberto Falcone, sticking Penguin into the thick of it, and just how it complicates an already complicated crazy situation with the gang war in of itself. But now you have Sophia looking into that. I just feel like the seeds have been sown so incredibly well into this Batverse series that felt still so very true to the vision that, you know, and the world of the Batman epic crime saga that Matt Reeves forged, that if you enjoyed this, you again haven't seen nothing yet. It gets better and better and better and better. So with that being said, I'm gonna end this video here. Let me know your thoughts about episode 1 down in the comments below. Let me know any theories you might have, because I can't wait to see what you guys have to say, because again, I've seen a few episodes, so seeing what you guys think or where things are going to go will be really interesting for me to read. But I'm going to shut up now. Please like the video if you enjoyed it. Do consider subscribing for more reviews and videos just like this. But until next time, guys, I hope you have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you, Bat Family, in the next video. Goodbye.